Hello, dear all. In this video, we are going to talk about part 2 of the novel To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. In my previous video, I had already discussed a few of the chapters from this part, and here we shall start from chapter 5 and will move gradually to the end of this part. From chapter 5 onward, the narrative is mostly about Mrs. McNab, who is the maid servant or the worker at the house of the Ramsays. As we know that in the end of part 1, Ramsays had left that house to come again. They have not come again. So Mrs. McNab is all alone. She is working inside that home most of the time, and she is trying to take care of the things. She's dusting them, she is arranging them, and she is trying to do as her best can be. As she is an old woman, so therefore always it's not possible for her to continue with that work in a very befitting manner. She gets tired as well. She feels bored as well. She feels sometimes upset as well because the full family has gone. Just a few of her fellow servants are available. And even these servants are not all the time present with her. They come few and far between. They do not stay for longer time. So it is most of the time Mrs. McNab who takes care of the things. Before we start with the narrative, let us understand one thing, that this part though is about Mrs. McNab, but here most of the tragic things are also told very briefly. This writer has got her own style. She would talk about the changing of the weather, conditions, and she would talk about the nature, sprouting new leaves and sometimes falling the old leaves. She would sometimes talk about the autumn season, sometime about the spring season, and sometime about the summer season. Strangely enough, in whole of the part 2, she does not talk about the winter season. Most of the time she relies on the spring season than on the summer season. In order to show perhaps that in the winter season very less activity will take place because of the coldness of the season and because of the snow and because of the shorter days and longer nights, the activity will be limited. And she would herself feel very much uncomfortable because of her old age and old bones, and so she is not talking much about the winter season. Let us talk about the other thing which has been put alongside that. That is the death of number of the members of the family of Mr. Ramsay. They are told about, and then the death is also talked about. So whatever is gone in between the part 1 and part 2, that is also told to us by using the opportunity of the description of McNab and the house and the things which happen in the house in the absence of that family, along with the activities which he is doing. So let us begin with the chapter 5. In the first passage of chapter 5, we can see that Mrs. McNab is not only dusting, cleaning, moving about, hopping about here in her rooms and in her places wherever she is, and she is singing a song as well. The writer tells us that the song which she is singing was a very popular song 20 years ago, and at that time people used to sing it, enjoy it. And now the song has lost its importance, not because the song is not good, but because Mrs. McNab does not have that voice, does not have that throat, does not have that kind of power to sing the song. And as a result, the song doesn't seem to be that powerful or that humorous or that good or that beautiful. But still, she is singing. So one can say that for Mrs. McNab, when she's all alone, humming and singing of that song, which was very popular 20 years ago, that is the companion she has got. That is the way she tries to spend her time. That is the way she feels that she's not alone. So music here has been brought in order to fill the gap which was created in the life of Mrs. Ramsay, not Mrs. Ramsay, of course, in the life of McNab, who is the servant at this home. She is all the time busy. She's all the time trying to take care of the household, but is singing that type of song as well. And if you move further into this chapter, I mean, to the close of this chapter, we find a touch of mysticism that the writer has tried to give. Like in the ending lines, the writer says that this is such a season in which Mrs. McNab is singing, humming, and harboning. She is having a type of vision as well, that if we visualize some mystic is present on the beach and is looking at the things and trying to ask the question, what I am, what is this, and how the things are going. The answer will come to him not in the clear sense, but somehow the answer will be available to such mystics, and so they will say that we are satisfied. We are going back to our places, and so we shall be satisfied and happy and comfortable. But Miss McNabb was not that comfortable. She was feeling something in her mind, and that something the writer tries to tell us in the next chapter. So that is why let us move on to chapter number 6. Chapter 6 nonetheless begins with the marriage of Prue to Mr. Ramsay. The marriage is taken place in a very good way, and both of the people like each other. And as McNab says, that these two people looked very beautiful in their pictures when they were married. And in that way, one of the happy news has also been bracketed, that has been told in parentheses, that Prue Ramsay was married. But in the close of this chapter, I mean the end of this chapter, we will be given another type of news where we will be finding some more happy things as well. This Prue, as it was told in the first part, that she is the most beautiful child, and she has been spending her time in thinking, playing, and in talking to her mother, and her mother was so much proud of her. She would most of the time try to talk about her, that her daughter Prue is very good one. The writer leaves the narrative of the marriage here in the very first paragraph of chapter 6. Rather, she proceeds to talk to us about the summer season now. According to her, the summer season is the start of the lengthening of the evening times, and as a result, the day timings increase and night timings decrease, alongside many other natural activities which continue to take place. And in that way, the summer season enters and has got its own flavors, its own players. For example, sometime bees can be listened humming, bees can be found flying here and there, not only the small bees, but the big bees, which she calls as the gnats. These gnats have also been seen going on here and there. So that goes to give an impression that the gnats and bees are present. So that is why the summer season has ultimately arrived. The change of the season, that has been very cleverly equaled to the death of Prue Ramsay. She was giving birth to her child, and during this birth, a tragedy happened and she died. So, changing of the season in nature is shown to be the change, the big change in the life of the characters as well. In the beginning of the chapter, the marriage takes place. In the middle of the chapter, the marriage ends because of the death of Prue. Prue has actually died. And in the background, the writer continuously stresses that the people are dying, seasons are changing, but whenever the darkness falls, the lighthouse is there to stroke its light here and there, and that light sometimes reaches the inside of the homes as well, the inside of the rooms as well, especially into that home where everybody is gone and darkness is there. Nights have become therefore shorter, and that is why during the short timings of night one can witness, one can see that there is the light of the lighthouse permanently available. So, permanence of the lighthouse has been contrasted with the impermanence of the human life, as well as the seasons and the weathers. In such a situation, the poet says that Mrs. McNab continues to dust, continues to sweep, continues to hum different types of songs as well. Well, then we further reach the middle of the chapter and we get another sad news that Andrew Ramsay, who probably was among certain people in the country of France, and there a bomb blew, and because of that, 40, 50 people died because of the death of these people. The tragedy occurred that among them, Andrew was also present, and he too died in that season. So in this way, what we are getting here that these chapters in part two have been used in order to continuously highlight the change of the life, the change of the weather, and this change is constantly coming before the readers, and readers are constantly made aware of the fact that okay, these things are happening, but some things are permanent, and the permanent one of the permanent thing is the lighthouse from where the light is coming, and it is never finishing, never ended as well, and it is constantly available. So the thing is that if you take lighthouse to be the symbol of something, it is the symbol of permanence, and because of that permanence, it stands as a contrast to the transitoriness and the temporariness of human life, because it is standing there, it is not dying at all, and the other people are continuously dying because of this thing or that thing. The chapter, however, ends with the note of one good thing, probably, that Carmichael has been able to make a print of the poems written by him. And the writer comments there that because of the war, probably it's World War One, the interest of the people has been once again revived into poetry, and that is why Carmichael is able to continue with that. So a kind of relationship between war and literature has also been established by the writer. With the same tone, let's move on to chapter 7. And chapter 7 again begins with the description of the weather, that night after night, summer and winter, the torments of the storm, the arrows-like stillness of the fine, from the upper rooms of the empty house, only gigantic chaos shrieked, and lightning could have been heard tumbling and tossing as the winds and the waves disported themselves, like the amorphous bulks of Leviathan, whose brows are pierced by no light of reason, and mounted on one on top of another, and lunged and plunged in the darkness of the daylight, in idiot games, until it seemed as if the universe were battling and tumbling in brute confusion and wanton lust aimlessly by itself. Now, these things about nature are again being shown to us in the sense that everything is going on in a very violent manner, in a very fast manner. Things are changing, like weather conditions are changing, the animals are changing, the nature is changing, and the plants and gardens are changing. The darkness and the light has again been contrasted once again. So in this way, chapter 7 goes to throw light only on the change which is going on here and there. New flowers are coming and the old flowers are disappearing. These things continuously the writer describes in order to show that appearances and disappearances continue in this life. Chapter 8 is again about Mrs. McNab, and she is thinking about the house, that if the inmates of the house do not appear, do not come back, what will be the kind of situation? She imagines that the house may be sold at Michaelmas perhaps, and when the house is sold, what will be her future? What will be the future of the sweeper maid and her son and other people who take care of the house? What will happen to them? So she's constantly thinking about that. What is going to be the result of all that? She thinks that the articles which are lying in the house may be sold perhaps, may be auctioned perhaps, but for her, one thing is very surprisingly odd. What will happen to some of the things which she probably liked? And these some of things she means are the belongings of Mrs. Ramsay. Some of the things of Mrs. Ramsay are still lying there, like her jewelry, like her clothes, like the clothes which she wore when she was traveling outside, and in that way, a number of other articles are there. And Miss McNab thinks that, okay, these things will be sold out. What is going to happen to these things? So she remembers and reminds herself of the presence of Mrs. Ramsay and the words she spoke to her and the way she behaved to her. So once again, the writer takes us back to the time when Mrs. Ramsay was present by using the technique of stream of consciousness. And therefore, this maid servant continuously reminds herself of the words spoken by her. For example, on the second page of this chapter, the words have been used, "Good evening, Mrs. McNab," as Mrs. Ramsay would come and say to her, talk to her. In that way, the maid servant remembers the other things as well. For example, how she showed her love for her sons and daughters and how she behaved with other people. What a fascinating person, according to Miss McNab, she was. And so, in that way, the kind of reminder has been given. Yes, this was a house of Miss Ramsay and how good she was. The presence of Miss Ramsay has been made available to us here, even after many of the people have died. Miss Ramsay has died. These things continuously are being realized, and Miss McNab is the source of these realizations. In this way, she remembers that good women, that person who was definitely very good one, and in that way feels very sad as well because Mrs. Ramsay is dead now. Chapter 9 begins with the similar type of situations, but then it is the house's desertedness that has been taught to us in a very sharp and very clever way by relating it to the weather conditions once again, and the animals and the rats and the tortoise and the flowers and the cabbages. Once again, it has been related in order to show that the things are changing, possibly new things are coming, and maybe something more may happen. And that is why she talks about the other activities of the people of the house. But still, again and again, she says that the things are changing, but the lighthouse is still, it is illuminating the dark corners and sending its light everywhere, permanently available. So Miss McNab thinks that, okay, the things may be happening in that way. She's got no control on that. She would like to talk to these things to some of the other people at the house also. For example, she talks about Mrs. Bast, whose son George is also present there in the house. Mrs. Bast is going to be a sweeper, and her son is George is a type of mechanic, let us say, because he's fixing the things most of the time. He's helping these ladies as well. So in that way, there are other servants also available who are taking care of everything. And Mrs. McNab seems to be the in charge of the whole house, and she remembers the other things as well when the servants were present and when the whole family was present, how these people used to work and what was the kind of solution now when the house possibly may be sold as well. But the ending of this chapter gives us a very beautiful news that now, at the end of chapter 9, Lily Briscoe seems to have arrived in that house, and she has definitely arrived there, and she was followed by Mr. Carmichael as well, who comes by train. So in this way, in the evening of 1 September, when the summer is passing, finishing, at that time, Lily Briscoe arrives and Carmichael also arrives. So two people have arrived there in the chapter 9 of this second section. Chapter 10 talks more about Carmichael, talks more about Lily Briscoe, that these people have come and Carmichael has come and how they are present there and what they are going to do. But we are not told very much about the interaction of these people with the other people, like anyone from Ramsay's family. We don't find anyone coming there. We don't find in this chapter anyone talking to these people. Only the description of Mr. Carmichael along with this woman, Lily Briscoe, is talked about and nothing else. Nothing special information has been given to us. Lily Briscoe, however, at the end of the chapter goes to reveal that she is unable to sleep perfectly or properly, and she keeps waking for a longer times. Maybe she is missing Sir Ramsay as well, and maybe she is lost in her own kind of thoughts, whatever she's got. So in this way, the chapter 10 ends, and also the part 2 ends. After that, definitely the last part, part 3, begins. So that is the kind of interval which the writer has taken care of in order to spend those 10 years and see and tell us what has been going on in these 10 years. And then the novel, therefore, is about the first part and second part. In the And the third part. In the second part, we are only getting the information. Probably the writer intends to show us that these things have been happening. So this is all about Miss McNab and all these chapters. Hope to see you in some next video. And I think so that the information and the analysis that I have tried to provide you in a very brief time, that would be helpful for the students of this novel, that they may be able to collect some idea what actually happens in second part of the novel, so that they can prepare themselves for the third part of the novel. Thank you very much for watching this. Hope to see you in some other video as well. Thank you.